than a handful of big corporations dominate every aspect of our lives. That may seem exaggerated, but from the breakfast we eat to the mattress we sleep on and everything we wear and consume in between is largely dependent on these corporations. Those are huge investment companies that determine the course of money flow. They are the main characters of the play that we are witnessing. How does it work? Let's take PepsiCo as an example. It is the parent company of many soda companies and snack companies. The so-called competitive brands are from factories from a few corporations who monopolize the entire industry. In the packaged food industry, there are a few big companies, like Unilever, the Coca-Cola company, Mondelez and Nestlé. In the picture you see that most brands in the food industry belong to one of these corporations. The big companies are on the stock market and have the big shareholders in the board of directors. On sources like Yahoo Finance, we can see detailed company info such as who the biggest shareholders actually are. Let's take PepsiCo again as an example. We see about 72% of stock is owned by no less than 3,155 institutional investors. These are investment companies, investment funds, insurance companies, banks, and in some cases governments. Who are the biggest institutional investors of PepsiCo? As you can see, only 10 of the investors own together nearly 1/3 of the stock. The top 10 of investors together amount to a value of $59 billion. But out of those 10, only 3 own more stock than the other 7. But it's not only in the food industry that their names come up. Facebook is the owner of WhatsApp and Instagram. Together with Twitter, they form the most popular social media platforms. Alphabet is the parent of all Google companies like YouTube and Gmail. But they are also the biggest investor in Android, one of the 2 operating systems for nearly all smartphones and tablets. The other operating system is Apple's iOS. If we add Microsoft to the above 3, we see 4 companies making the software for nearly all computers, tablets and smartphones in the world. Let's see who are the biggest shareholders of these companies. Take Facebook. We see that 80% of the stock is owned by institutional investors. These are the same names that came up in the food industry. The same investors are in the top 3. Next is Twitter. It forms with Facebook and Instagram the top 3. Surprisingly, this company is in the hands of the same investors as well. We see them again with Apple and even with their biggest competitor, Microsoft. Also, if we look at other big companies in the tech industry that develop and make our computers, TVs, phones and home appliances, we see the same big investors that together own the majority of the stock. It's true for all industries, I'm not exaggerating. They own the tobacco companies that produce all the popular tobacco brands. But they also own all big pharmaceutical companies and the scientific institutions that produce medicine. They own the companies that produce our metals and also the entire car, plane and weapon industry, where a great deal of the metals and raw materials are used. They own the companies that build our electronics, they own the big warehouses and online markets, and even the means of payment we use to buy their products. Most popular insurance companies, banks, construction companies, telephone companies, restaurant chains and cosmetics are owned by the same institutional investors we have just seen. These institutional investors are mainly investment firms, banks and insurance companies. In turn, they themselves are owned by shareholders, and the most surprising thing is that they own each other's stocks. Together they form an immense network comparable to a pyramid. The smaller investors are owned by larger investors. Those are owned by even bigger investors. The visible top of this pyramid shows only two companies whose names we have often seen by now. They are Vanguard and BlackRock. The power of these two companies is beyond your imagination. Not only do they own a large part of the stocks of nearly all big companies, but also the stocks of the investors in those companies. This gives them a complete monopoly. A Bloomberg report states that both these companies in the year 2028 together will have investments in the amount of $20 trillion. That means that they will own almost anything. Bloomberg calls BlackRock the fourth branch of government because it's the only private agency that closely works with the central banks. BlackRock lends money to the central bank, but it's also the advisor. It also developed the software the central bank uses. Many BlackRock employees were in the White House with Bush and Obama. Its CEO Larry Fink can count on a warm welcome from leaders and politicians. Not so strange if you know that he is the frontman of the ruling company. But Larry Fink does not pull the strings himself. BlackRock itself is also owned by shareholders. Who are those shareholders? We come to a strange conclusion. The biggest shareholder is Vanguard. But now it gets murky. Vanguard is a private company and we cannot see who the shareholders are. The elite who own Vanguard apparently do not like being in the spotlights. But of course they cannot hide from who is willing to dig. So the Gates Foundation is one of the most influential entities in everything that concerns our health. The Gates Foundation works closely with the biggest pharma companies, among which are Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, BioNTech and Bayer. And we have just seen who their biggest shareholders are. Bill Gates was not a poor computer nerd who miraculously became very rich. He's from a philanthropist family that works for the absolute elite. His Microsoft is owned by Vanguard, BlackRock and Berkshire Hathaway. But the Gates Foundation, after BlackRock and Vanguard, is the biggest shareholder in Berkshire Hathaway. He was even the member of the board there. They say that about 90% of the international media is owned by 9 media conglomerates. Whether we take the monopolists Netflix and Amazon Prime, or enormous concerns that own many daughter companies like Time Warner, the Walt Disney Company, Comcast, Fox Corporations, Bertelsmann and Viacom CBS, we see that the same names own the stocks. These corporations not only make all the programs, movies and documentaries, but also own the channels on which those are broadcast. So not only the industries, but also the information is owned by the elite.
People think it's like different, they think it's actually real. and they think they're reporting something like honest or true to you. And they actually also think different channels on the television programming are not all part of the same thing. It's pretty unbelievable, especially when you look at this.
Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But we are concerned about
plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
the sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish the same fake stories without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 Better diagnostics, treatments, and a safe and effective vaccine.
COVID-19 diagnostics, therapeutics and vaccines.
Largement du développement et du déploiement rapide de diagnostics, vaccins et traitements efficaces.
Universal access to vaccination, treatment and diagnostics.
Equitable access to new COVID diagnostics, therapeutics and vaccine.
We must all work together on improving diagnostics, accelerating therapies, and ultimately developing a vaccine.
We need to make vaccines, treatment, and diagnostics accessible to everyone.
Vaccines, treatments, and diagnosis will be the most effective way to do it.
We need new diagnostics, vaccines, treatments, and an equal distribution to all.
On equitable access to diagnostics, treatments, and vaccines.
And affordability of the vaccines, therapeutics, and diagnostics
in order to develop adequate treatments and vaccine.
Big question, Tom, from a lot of New Yorkers. When might we ever get back to normal? The governor talked today about working toward a new normal.
So we're going to a different place, which is a new normal.
This morning, almost 40 million Californians waking up to a new normal.
Social distancing at schools and businesses.
You may be having dinner with a waiter wearing gloves, maybe a face mask, dinner where the menu is disposable, where your temperature is checked before you walk in.
A new normal that will hopefully allow America to reopen.
And looking forward into this next phase of reopening and establishing some kind of new normal.
Embrace the new normals of social distancing and sheltering in place, all the physical isolation.
Now masks are becoming the new normal.
What do you think? Can schools operate under social distancing guidelines? And is that what they're going to potentially have to do as the new normal?
When we get out of the sort of new normal and get to a new normal.
Just trying to cope with the new normal. This is the new normal.
Imagining or reimagining what society is going to look like when they reopen. If you want to go to a restaurant, you're going to have your temperature taken before you're allowed inside to dine. So that's just possibly going to be the new normal that we see down the road.
Adjust our lives and get ready for the new normal.
This new normal is going to look very, very different.
A stepwise return to not normal, but a new normal.
Long lines for food becoming a new normal.
The communities return to normal, or the new normal, on what that may be.
The coronavirus pandemic has meant not only online classes, but having to watch their job and internship offers go down the drain. So what is the new normal like for the class of COVID-19?
There will be a new normal. We just don't know what that new normal is yet.
So a return to normal as we knew it is not on the cards in the near future. And it is really important that I am upfront with you right now about that. What we will be seeking to do is find a new normal.
Get out of the lockdown and return to what will
by the way, be a new normal. It's not going to be the normal we experienced before the virus took hold.
Can I say this is likely to be the new norm?
We will be having to live in a new normal, as we were trying to say, with this virus.
We keep talking about this is the new normal. I'm just curious, when can we expect life to go back to the true normal? When is this expected to peak? Do you guys have some sort of timeline or estimate in mind? Or?
So, as I have repeatedly said, this is our new normal.
If we are going to be able to move ahead into our new normal, we will find our new normal in the coming weeks.
To make sure that we can do everything we can to flatten the curve so that we can return not to the old normal, but to a new normal that allows us to function more and more openly as a society.
We can continue to improve how we work and play in this new normal. All of us should be able to name all the people we've been in close contact with over the last 2 weeks as a new normal.
Get New Brunswick back to the new normal.
Because that really is going to be part of our new normal moving forward. So these are all elements of our new normal.
We will transition into the new normal.
What we consider normal before COVID-19 is still a long way from returning.
Our lives are changing and about to change in a very significant way. But the thing that we called normal, our old normal, was just the new normal for people who are older than us. And this new normal that is so shocking for all of us is just the normal of future generations. I don't mean future generations 50 years from now. I mean people who are born 5 years from now.
The best hope of getting back to normal as soon as possible is never getting ahead of where we are right now.
So it's not going to be returned to normal. People will have to realize this is not going to go away anytime soon, and we're gonna have to keep this up. If you think that this is going to be going back to normal in July, think again.
This will be the new normal until a vaccine is developed.
It's a very pertinent question to ask, how do we build back better?
To build back better or whatever.
To build back better than before.
Joe Biden calls it build back better.
Build back better.
Building back better.
To do things differently. To build back better.
We're going to build it back better.
And build it back better.
My plan to build back better.
Start taking all the problems that have been created in education and mental health and start to build back in a positive way.
I have launched a booklet called Build Back Better.
It's about building this country back better.
Growing conspiracy following it. It is called the Great Reset.
An unprecedented opportunity to rethink and reset the ways in which we live.
The great opportunity for reset.
The theory even calls Mr. Biden's campaign slogan, Build Back Better, a front for the conspiracy.
Build back better.
Building back better our economy.
Build back better.
All elements of the Great Reset are fundamental to building the future we need.
It's a big effort to, some would say, to build back better. We would say to really have a great reset.
Conspiracy.
9, that was when WHO said, okay, there will be a pandemic, and that's when the thing started. And then you have one opportunity to do it right. I mean, day one is so important. In day one, you start your communication with the press, with the people, and you have to do it right. I mean, you have to go for one voice, one message. In Belgium, they chose to appoint a non-politician to do that. I mean, I have no party affiliations, and that makes things a little bit, at that time at least, a little bit easier, because you're not attacked politically, majority, minority. That doesn't come into play, and that was a huge advantage. The second advantage is that you can play in Brussels the complete naive guy and get a lot more done than you would otherwise be able to do. So one voice, one message. That's the tone that you set on day one, and you have to be very transparent in that. My name is the Interministerial Commissary for Pandemic Influenza Preparedness Planning. That, of course, is too long. That became the Flu Commissary, and that was a lot easier. You have to be omnipresent that first day or the first days. so that you attract the media attention. You make an agreement with them that you will tell them all, and if they call, you will pick up the phone. When you do that, then you can profit from these early days to get complete carpet coverage of the field, and they're not going to search for alternative voices there. And if you do that, that makes things a lot easier. And then you convey the message, and you can do that if you do it that way, that our country is ready for a pandemic. That is a gross overestimation for sure, but it is crucial to go into that pandemic.